Welcome to the Shock Your Potential podcast, where we focus on creating positive, productive, and profitable workplaces. I am your host, Michael Sherlock. I am a leadership and sales expert, best known for being serious about business, despite what you may think by my appearance of often very colorful hair and sometimes crazy shoes. My guests bring a wealth of information that will support your career and your business, along with many pearls of wisdom to support balance in your personal and professional lives. Listen in as I have another amazing conversation with a guest who will certainly shock your potential. So Barb Garrison is a career and money breakthrough coach and job you love expert at Internal Groove, the company she founded 14 years ago. Now, I wish I would have found her a long time ago, because let me tell you what she specializes in. She helps burned out, success-driven professionals who are just going through the motions. She helps them to design a career based on their truth. You know, that thing that makes you jump out of bed every morning and say, I'm ready. I can't wait to tackle this. She's the creator of the Job I Love Revolution, and she supports corporate executives and entrepreneurs to move from self-doubt, boom, and burned out, boom, to relief and freedom. And after 18 years in marketing and surviving corporate burnout herself, so we'll have good conversations about that. So joining me today is Barb Garrison. Thank you so much for joining me, Barb.
Oh, thanks, Michael. I so appreciate it. You might win the prize for the best bio summary I've heard. I love your extra exclamations that go in there. Thank you.
I know that there were 3 times in my career that I burned out, 3 specific times. And you'd think you'd learn from the first one, right? No, you don't. But I wish there would have been a coach at that time. Coaches weren't a thing, when I had my first, burnout. That wasn't a part of our kind of our culture. And today I'm so thankful that it is, because we know that it's okay to reach out to somebody. So I hit a little of your bio, but I know your story always comes better from you. So tell us a little bit about you, your business this time around, Miss Two-Time Entrepreneur, and a little bit about how you help your clients to shock their potential.
Yes, of course. And you actually have a similar story as me, which is that when I desperately needed a coach like myself, which was about 15 and a half years ago, it didn't really exist, not in the way that it does today. And so I kind of figured it out piecemeal on my own when I was working a job that I would call, high profile. It was in Los Angeles. It was a large company. I had incredible perks. I got to walk on red carpets. I had a
Mm.
team. I got to do a lot of different things that were my strengths, but I was working 6 and 7 days a week, really like 12 to 16 hours a day. And, I started noticing that I was really, yeah, the way I say it is like my soul was sort of leaking out of me bit by bit. And there was
Yes.
nothing wrong with the job. It just was starting to not fit for me anymore. I really noticed I was moving into kind of another chapter of my life. I had just gotten married later in life after I'd had this very successful career that I'd worked really my whole adult life to get to. And it was sort of like I got to that echelon. I was proud to be there. I had a great salary, great perks, great business card, lovely title, all the things I thought I wanted, while I was looking around going, really? I don't know if this is it. And do I care enough about this? Does this really light me up? And what I didn't know at the time were how many patterns and habits that I had myself that were actually contributing to my lack of satisfaction.
Mhm.
And I didn't really use the word burnout at first, but what I noticed was I started having more and more symptoms of stress, physical symptoms of stress. And, it just getting stranger and stranger. And then the culmination was when, during the busiest season of the company, I actually lost my voice. Well, duh, what a metaphor, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
lost my voice. And, I was diagnosed with bronchitis and I kept taking antibiotics and I was on 2 or 3 rounds of them and it wasn't getting better.
Mm.
And so it was just so interesting. Like I couldn't find my voice. So, that was a physical thing. And it didn't start to occur to me later until the fact I was starting to think, well, am I really speaking my truth? Am I really saying what's right for me? Is it really what I need to be doing? And so I started to explore this idea of truth. I did ultimately give my notice, and I I didn't know what I was going to do instead. A lot of people thought I was crazy for giving up a position I'd worked my whole life to get to. That seemed like the kind of work there would be a line out the door of people trying to get to this job, and there was. And so people couldn't get their head wrapped around the fact that I didn't have another place I was going to go. I had planned for it. I call it a freedom fund. I saved a piece of my paycheck. I recommend everybody does this, even if it's
Yes.
only $5 a month. Have it
Great
automatically
to have it.
transferred into your freedom fund. You never
Yep.
know what you might want to use it for. Luckily, I had done that. And I told people I was going to be a bartender in Puerto Vallarta, and I was going to build a little hut, only I was going to be as the bartender facing the ocean while the customers faced the street.
You and I are so much alike. We could have been side by side right there, slinging drinks.
And I have to say, I never became that bartender. However, what I realized is there was a lot of aspects of that freedom and that creativity that I was hungry for. And that's what I ultimately explored. So I left my job. I sat under a tree. Well, I went from the couch to the bed to the tree to really get my wellness back, because I really did have bronchitis that wasn't going
Yeah.
away. So I did that for a few months and really explored, like, if I knew for sure I couldn't fail, what would I do instead? And really, where were my strengths? And so I discovered a lot of things about myself that I hadn't been as honest about as I was now ready to be.
Mm.
And so, anyways, that's how it all began. That's where Internal Groove was born.
I love it. As you were talking, gosh, I was taking so many notes and I was thinking about so many correlations, but literally the losing of your voice, how symbolic is that? But the fact that your body would not recover was such a message to you. Thank goodness you finally recognized it. And that was the first time that I finally had to recognize my first burnout, was when I was having chest pains so bad that my doctor thought I was having a heart attack because my whole left arm went numb. And he
Mm.
said, "You need to get to the ER." And I'm like, "Oh, I've had these chest pains before. We've talked." He's like, "No, quit calling me. Go to the ER." So what I do, I drove myself to the ER. But you know, you learn as you go along that your body will tell you when you are not on the right path. But the question is, are we listening?
Yes, definitely. And it was interesting because after I went back to the doctor for like the fourth time, it was actually in her office that I had the light bulb, because my bronchitis wasn't fully going away. And she said, "I really want you to go home, and I want you to go to sleep, and I want you to rest." Because I was still working really hard. It was the busiest season of the year. And I said, "I can't do that." She said, "Well, you're going to have to." And I said, "Well, then I'm going to just quit." And it just sort of like came out of my mouth. I wasn't, it's like I heard it in my ears before I realized what I said. And she said, "You can't do that." I said, "Well, why not?" And all of a sudden I started defending this idea that in the moment I had just blurted out.
I can't
So
tell you I
she did
can't
me a
quit my
huge
job.
favor. Now, I
I'll
didn't
quit
quit
my
right
job if I
away,
want
but
to.
it was probably a month later
Yeah.
when I actually did get my voice back. I actually waited until I felt physically better to make sure that it really was the right choice for me and I wasn't making it purely from an emotional place.
Yeah, that's really good. And when you work with people today and you help them, find your voice or find what, really drives you. When people come to you, what kind of state are they in? Do they know they need that help? Do they think they do, but they're a little in denial? Are they begging for it? Or all of the above?
Well, a little bit of all of the above, but the most common that I see is many people have their hair on fire. That's what I usually
Mhm.
say, in some form or another, either emotionally, physically, mentally, they're in tears. I've had people call me who I didn't even know, who literally are like, "Hi, my name is so and so, and I'm going to go into my boss right now and quit my job." And so the first thing I say is, "Hold on, take off your shoes.
Whoa.
Just take off your shoes, take off your shoes and take a breath, sit down. Let's have a conversation." So, yeah, most people are in a fair amount of pain. We as human beings, especially if we're high achievers, you know, and I was like this in the sense that I was very tenacious. Like, I can figure this out.
Mm.
And so we tend to wait until we're in enough pain that we're actually willing to reach out for help. And so I
Mhm.
do get a lot of people who call me, first 5 minutes, they're in tears, spilling it all out to me. And that's okay. I welcome that. I will tell you, I am now the coach that I desperately needed 15 years ago that didn't really
Yeah.
exist. And when people find out that, I've walked their path and reinvented myself and got to the other side of the street, and I've never been happier, never felt more fulfilled. I've never had a job for 15 years, that's for sure, and never one that I've been this happy at. So that tends to play a big role in the clients that we resonate with each other. I tend to attract a lot of people who are in what I would call high burnout industries, which tend to be the ones that, when you're getting out of college, you think are the ones that sound fun, like the really
Right.
glamorous ones, the ones that seem great and so many great perks and, oh, it's going to be so much fun. That's fine when you're 22. And you have a ton of energy, but 10 years later, sometimes, or 20 years later, you wake up and you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking?
Yeah,
Um,
when you're that young and your metabolism still works and you can get
exactly.
by on 5 hours of sleep and
Exactly.
you can stop and get a donut on the way to work every day and
Exactly.
oh
For me, it was
yeah.
bagels on the way to work on the seat every day. Yep. That's exactly right. So it's
I would
funny.
stop at the 7-Eleven and buy these peanut butter bars at breakfast time. They were like this like a cookie thing. Like
Uh-huh.
I thought it had peanut butter in it. That made it that made it healthy, right?
That was the healthy
Yeah.
part, right?
That quit at like 28 because I realized that wasn't going to be a good sustainable
Uh-huh.
practice. So I love it that you tell people, wait, take off your shoes. And I assume I know the reason behind this, but tell me a little bit about why you say, take off your shoes, sit down and breathe.
The first thing is that I don't ever recommend people make a decision in an emotional state.
Yeah.
We don't have the full capacity of our brain, and I think it's easy to quickly jump into a thought and say, okay, this is just going to get me out of pain. And the truth is that we're going to be much more likely to get out of pain if we are more deliberate in our choices and taking the time to really explore what's truly right for us.
Hmm. And well, and I was thinking too, the very fact of, take your shoes off means, all right, it's very unlikely you're going to run into your boss's office right now without your shoes on.
Well, there's
So
that too, and that's
the
actually the first way I meant it.
the
Yeah,
first, by you have to put them back on, which means you have to think about it at least for a second.
exactly, exactly. That's exactly the point. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that their pain isn't just things that are external to them. Like, it's not just their boss, it's not just they need a new job, it's not just they don't like their industry.
Yes.
There's a lot of internal stuff that goes on that, I call the inner work, or the how, like how I bring myself to what I do, that people are not aware of. They think if they just get a new job, it's going to get all better.
Oh
And
yeah.
that is, to me, anecdotally, this isn't scientific, but anecdotally, I would say my work with clients and my own life over the last 14 years, that's probably only about 20% of it. I think
Hmm.
the other 80% is really how we bring ourselves to what we do that is
Yeah.
impacting us the most.
Yeah, I call it looking in the mirror. So I always say, you might not have a mirror with you, but pretend your hand is the mirror. And sometimes you have to look at it. As I agree. And one of the things that you said that really struck me too is, when you realized how many patterns and habits that you had that were really, contributing to your sense of dissatisfaction or your overwhelm. And it makes me think of, times when, I mean, I can think of my earliest, career out of college job where I was so busy all the time. And I think I loved being busy. People are like, so what are you doing? I'm so busy. Like
Mhm.
I wrapped my persona around this busy person because somehow I thought that meant I was important. And all I was doing was creating bad habits that I continued to be busy and, that deer in the headlights look. And all that does is perpetuate the heart racing and the sense of adrenaline. And until I said, what the heck, what this is doing is leading to, problems with what I had is an inflamed chest cavity wall. So I had so much stress building up that my body was physically like your voice, moving against me. But it was because I kept this sense of tension all the time until I started to peel back those onion layers and say, okay, it's not the job. It's not the boss. It's not the coworker. It's not the commute. It's not your ex-husband. It's you. All right,
Mhm.
sometimes it's the ex-husband too. But
You are absolutely right, Michael. Bingo. That's it. And, in addition to all of that, there's also reinforcement from a societal level that this is like what a go-getter looks like. And
yes.
this is how they behave. And it's like we get affirmations, we get accolades, we get reinforcement from those around us. Wow, she's really making things happen. She's a mover and a shaker. And yeah, what I often will say to my clients is adrenaline is a drug and it's addictive.
Yeah.
And it is a drug we have to get off of as much as any, synthetic chemical drug that we may need to go to rehab for. It is literally a drug. And, people are so used to that rush that they use it to motivate themselves. And
Yeah.
so often when you remove that drug, then they're not sure who they are without it.
Right. Yeah, you build your whole persona on it. And I think you're absolutely right. When you break it down and you start to get out of that, people also aren't sure who you are anymore. So it's hard to try and figure out how to describe yourself in a new way and kind of present yourself in a new way. And I think sometimes we get lost saying, well, what if they don't like this new me? Or what if they think I'm lazy because I'm not running on all that adrenaline all the time, or I'm not going, 100 hours a week. And that can be as counterproductive to change as the fear of letting go of the adrenaline.
Absolutely. I actually work with my clients on the loss that's associated with it because most people don't acknowledge that there actually is a loss. It doesn't mean you want to go back to it, but acknowledging the loss and then looking for ways to transform that loss into a gain. But if you don't acknowledge it, there is actually even, I would say, a little bit of grief sometimes associated with it because it can be tied to your identity.
Yeah.
And it was for me at that time, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. My theory, this is kind of my little belief, is that the more we operate out of love for our client, our mission, our product, our service, and love for ourselves, that we will have better results all the way around. But I think sometimes people are a little intimidated by the word love and maybe not intimidated, maybe just uncertain about what that means. So how would you approach the concept of leading with love in what you do with your clients every day?
The way that I interact with my clients, I call it fierce client love. And what I mean by that is believing in them so wholeheartedly that there's this fierceness for who they are, even when they forget themselves. So I have this sense, this is kind of a funny visual, but almost like there's this highest potential. To talk about shock your potential, right? This highest potential that sort of sits on their shoulder. It's like the highest version of them, the highest possible them that they don't tap into on a regular basis. And when I coach my clients, I try to interact with that part of them. Even when on the outside, maybe they're in pain, they're frustrated, they're scared, they are not sure, they're confused, they're emotional, or all of the above. I still speak to that highest version of themselves. And so I call that fierce client love. And, I don't advertise that generally. I don't talk about it generally. I don't tell them that because, yeah, some people aren't that comfortable with it. But to me, that's how I show up as a coach. Because if you have a client that you are not able to experience that with, they're probably not the right fit for you. And there's a better coach for them somewhere else, or a
Mhm.
better resource, or some kind of better tool. Because, I feel like one of the things I have x-ray vision about is when I meet someone and they come to me and their hair's on fire and they're upset and confused, I have this really strong sense of who they are underneath all that dust bunnies, all the dust bunnies that
Mhm.
are floating around on top of them, like the truth of who they are. So I really work with people's truth because for the most part, we don't own that truth. And so speaking of love, to me, the source of the greatest self-love or fierce self-love is really our truth, like really acknowledging what is true about us. Like, is that adrenaline dance that we do really our truth? Is that who we are? Is what we're doing really our truth in terms of what we believe in the most? Are we behaving in a way that the company says we're supposed to? Or are we really listening to who we truly are.
Yeah. And as you talked about speaking to that part of them, that part that really is all that they can be, it reminds me very much about, when you raise a child, if you're telling them, don't do this, don't do that, you're raising them with a set of, ideals of what they're doing wrong. But if you say, oh, look at what you've done, how beautiful. Oh, look at what you created, how wonderful. Then we spark that, we nurture that part. Now, don't get me wrong. I've made plenty of screw ups with my son, but I'm a lot better grandmother than I was a mother. but, but I think as adults, when we're so tied up in the persona that we present and that we believe in ourselves, it must be really hard to hear somebody talk to you at the greatness you can achieve. But if you can get through to that part of them, what a great gift to show somebody, hey, I already see you there. I already see you at this level. This is how I'm going to interact with you. That is who you are. That could really boost somebody out of the hair on fire to say, whoa, wait, hold on. Wait, I don't have to be this crazy. Maybe there's another way to operate.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned being a mom to your son is, it does come up, while I'm not a therapist, it does come up that some of the patterns that people learn have to do with, the way it was modeled for them to believe in themselves when they were young. So we do touch on that a little bit just to get a sense of kind of the environment that they were raised in,
Hmm.
because they see themselves as if that's truth. What a lot of people say to me is, oh, that's just my personality, or that's just how I'm wired. And what I often will say, that's not your personality. That's what you believe. But that's
Yes.
not actually your personality. And often by the time I say that, I know them well enough that I can point out evidence that I've personally witnessed that kind of poke holes in that story.
Yeah. Well, and it is important to know that you can change that personality, or you can change how you present. And I as you were talking, I was thinking about a lot of my life. My husband called it saving puppies. He always told me I saved puppies, because my mom would always make me go play with the kids. That she would say, hey, that little girl doesn't have any friends, go play with her. Those kids don't have any friends, go play with them. I always said, Mom, there's a reason they don't have any friends. But I would go play with them. Sometimes it worked out well. Sometimes it didn't, right? But it set up this mindset in me that I had to help everybody, that I had to always give so much of myself. Now, I'm not blaming my mother, who's probably listening, going, that's not what I said, which she knows it's exactly what she said. But um, at somewhere along the way, I learned that giving myself away, to people emotionally all the time did not help me maintain any energy. But I didn't have to disregard people or give too much. There was a new path I could pick. But it wasn't until my husband kept saying, are you saving a puppy? And I go, no, no, but they need this, this, this. And then finally I'm like, yes, I'm saving a puppy.
He's a good husband.
He's a very good husband. Took a while to find him. Oh my gosh, Barb, we could talk all day. Now, I know we're going to have all your information on our show notes, but just in case somebody wants to find you right now, what's the best way for them to look you up?
They can go to my website, internalgroove, groove.com. The other thing I will mention is I do have a gift for all your listeners. If they go to Monday Morning Leap, leap.com,
Okay.
there is a gift there for them where each Monday they will receive a little tidbit of a recording or a video or an article that will give them a tip or a strategy that they can implement that week that will help them with more of the things we've been talking about today.
I love it. MondayMorningLeap.com was
Yes.
it?
Yes.
Excellent. We'll put that in there as well. So before we go, do you have any last words of wisdom or pearls of advice for my listeners and viewers?
Well, the idea of really loving ourselves, I think, is about valuing ourselves. So I want people to really listen to the idea of how is it that they value who they are, not just their gifts and talents, although that's a part of it, but who are they when they're just sitting there? Who are they as a human being? Who are they in their heart? What do they believe in? We cannot really even underestimate our value because it impacts our work. It impacts how we ask for raises, it impacts how we price our services, and it impacts our relationships. So that's a really important piece not to forget.
I love it. Barb, you are filled with lots of wisdom. And obviously, I think that you definitely have become the person that you needed earlier in your career, which means that you are treating the people that you work with, definitely helping them to lead with love. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Shock Your Potential podcast. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and like us today.